Welcome to a training about the HMSC's Animal Care Plan. This training is for anyone who will be holding animals in captivity at HMSC. My name is Cinnamon Moffett, and I'm the Research Program Manager at Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center. Hatfield has always cared about the animals here, and this policy formalizes that shared value. The driver behind this policy was several years back. We had some animal welfare complaints. Those complaints go to the Animal Care Program at the university, also known as the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, or IACUC. They are responsible for the care of vertebrates and cephalopod animals, but they're also responsible for responding to any and all animal welfare complaints. They followed up with our director here at Hatfield, Bob Cowan, and asked how he was going to address some of these issues. The director then pulled together a committee that included representation from research, academic, and outreach groups at Hatfield. This group developed the plan to formalize our values that would be overseen locally at Hatfield. Thus, the Animal Care Plan was officially launched in spring 2019. HMSC's Animal Care Program was modeled off a program in British Columbia and follows global trends in animal welfare. In fact, some international publications are asking you to cite your institutional animal care protocols. This plan will meet those requirements. The HMSC Animal Care Plan is a policy that covers researchers' responsibilities for the care of all live vertebrate and invertebrate post-larval non-planktonic animals held in captivity for education, outreach, and research activities. We're going to walk through the language of this plan just briefly here and talk about who is responsible for the implementation of this plan. Researchers in this plan include just about everyone. In this policy, researcher refers to our instructors, students, aquarists, interns, and all of our researchers, and applies to all HMSC OSU personnel or anyone working within any of the OSU HMSC facilities. This plan covers all live vertebrates and cephalopods, which are also covered under the university's IACUC plan, but also includes all post-larval non-planktonic invertebrates. So this does not include something like rotifers or Artemia, and includes any animal held in captivity, where captivity is defined by the purposeful act of confining a living animal for any length of time on site. This does not include something like the barnacles that are encrusting the intake pipes or animals that you are working with in the field. Any research, education, or outreach activity, including holding and observation, are included in this plan. Researchers are responsible to abide by the policies and procedures outlined in the Animal Care Plan. If not, HMSC can remove access to spaces. So this plan formalizes our animal care values, but there is also a push at the university to explore including invertebrates in the IACUC process. One example is the recent addition of cephalopods into this program. We are hoping this plan addresses some of those issues while being monitored and controlled here locally at Hatfield. And we hope that you find this process less cumbersome than the full IACUC process. So basically, this means you'll be responsible for 5 things while you're holding animals in captivity at Hatfield. These are listed in order that you might do them, but let's talk first about item number 1, 2, and 4. Number 1, please let your committee know that you are holding animals, including when and where you'll be holding them. The second item is that you must have a tank label displayed on each tank or the room of tanks, if they're all the same, indicating which animals are in the tanks, when they were collected, and the contact information for who's responsible for them. This is so that if anyone sees issues like the tanks are overflowing, we know who to call. At the end of this training, I will show you where you can get an example of tank labels. Also, in our seawater classrooms, there are binders with all this information and pre-made labels for you. You just fill them out with a black Sharpie and we can reuse them. The fourth item on this list is to keep a health log. This includes information like when and who checked on the animals. Was the flow okay? Was the water clarity okay? And were the animals fed? Okay, let's go a bit more into depth with items 3, 5, and 6. Okay, number 3, review what can be held in our open flow-through seawater system. The open flow-through seawater requirement only applies to OSU buildings at Hatfield. The federal buildings, including NAL and RSF, have an effluent chlorination treatment, so different rules apply. That is not true for the systems in the state building, where we have no effluent treatment. Water is pumped out of the reservoir into the system and back into the bay. So we must be a little bit more particular about what we put in those systems. So if you are an OSU employee working in NAL, you must still comply with the animal care plan, but you might have slightly different requirements and restrictions around seawater use. So a star on this slide indicates that the item might not be applicable in the federal buildings. At Hatfield, all animals must be collected, transported, and held per requirement of state and/or federal permits. In the state buildings, only healthy native species collected in Oregon waters can be held in our tanks. Healthy meaning no sick or diseased animals, and native meaning non-controlled species only, as according to ODF&W regulations. Any vertebrates, including fish and cephalopods, held in OSU facilities at Hatfield must have an approved IACUC and a posted A-cup number. Any food that is used must be frozen, collected locally, or provided by the Broodstock program. This is to reduce disease transfer with food items. There is no use of chemical treatments, herbicides, pesticides, or general use fertilizers in our open systems. Any pH or temperature alterations at a lab level must be aggregated down to an acceptable range. Number 5 on our list was following pre-approved animal care guidelines or your own treatment SOPs. The approved guidelines are for those holding animals in the flow-through system that are doing everything they can to care for those animals. This is primarily animals that are on display, animals that are being well fed, held in optimal water conditions at the appropriate stocking densities. We know that holding animals in captivity is altering their existence, but if you're following the pre-approved guidelines, you're doing everything you can to take care of the health and well-being of those animals. However, for our researchers, you may need to augment some of those parameters. If so, you will need to document best practice treatment standard operating procedures or treatment SOPs. So when can a researcher work under an approved animal care guidelines, or when do they need their own treatment operating procedures? Well, we have a checklist on our website to help you decide when you need to step beyond the pre-approved guidelines and write something up. If you're working on a closed or partially closed system, you're probably going to need to write something up. If you're altering the incoming seawater, including but not limited to temperature, dissolved oxygen, salinity, pH, nutrient loading, you're probably going to need to write something up. Are you tending to your animals outside of optimal care? And there's some wiggle room here, but if you're changing how you're feeding them, their habitat or stocking density, then you're probably not offering optimal care and you're going to need to write something up. If you are stressing them on purpose and causing their behavior or health to change, write something up. It is hard to know if an animal, especially invertebrate, is feeling pain, but if the behavior is changing, you're probably causing some type of stress and you should document that. This last bullet might be a change for some folks, but if you are unable to release the animal back into the environment where you collected them and you need to end their life at the end of your experiment, then you're going to need to do that in the most non-painful way, following euthanasia or pithing protocols. If your research does not allow you to do this because euthanasia protocols like using MS-222 or magnesium chloride will impact your research, you need to check yes on this checklist and write something up. Please note that it is no longer acceptable just to freeze an animal and call that euthanasia. Euthanasia is a two-step process. Freezing can be a part of that protocol, but there has to be something that anesthetizes the animal first. If you need more information on the protocols that are approved for your specific animal, check out the animal care website for references from the NVMA. So if you answered yes to any of the above on this checklist, you will need to complete a treatment SOP for the parameter that you'll be altering. We're not saying no to anything, you just need to document why you're doing what you're doing. Here's my made-up example of a treatment standard operating procedure for purple sea urchin, where I plan to do some thermal stress work. Start by including the basic information on your lab tags. Then focus on the thing that's outside of the guidelines. List the what, how, and why of your treatment. Think about a layperson coming in and asking you why you did what you did. This gives you that documentation. So in this example, all animal holding procedures will follow the approved guidelines except water temperature. So the what, water temperature will increase from ambient to 20 degrees Celsius. The how, Flow-through water will be heated 1 degree a day from inline heat exchanger until the water reaches 20 degrees C. Animals will be held at 20 degrees C for 21 days, and then water temperature will be decreased 1 degree a day until the flow-through water is back at ambient temperature. Why? Project will mimic climate change stresses impacts on feeding rates due to warmer waters. Then you can say everything else will follow the approved guidelines. This is as detailed as you'll need to be on your own SOPs. This is the documentation that we need to show we are doing the best we can to care for the health and well-being of our animals while still meeting our research goals. For number 6, you don't have to do anything, but there is a 2-step health monitoring check where a representative approved by the committee will do weekly welfare monitoring and will let the committee know if there are any issues. Then a representative approved by the HMSC on-site vet will also do monthly reviews and follow up with any welfare concerns. So that's it really. The animal care plan outlines our responsibilities. It talks about the approved guidelines and walks through the treatment SOPs that cover best practices. It also lets you know where there's resources if you need them. We are still working on these resources, but please check out the animal care website if you need. We do ask that you have whatever protocols you need in an animal care binder in your lab or classroom, so they're easy for our health monitors to find. These binders are already in the classrooms, and there are extra binders in the East Wing Shared Lab 121 if your lab is setting up something for the very first time. So let's take a quick look at the website. On the HMSC webpage, if you go to Facilities, you will find a tab for the Animal Care Plan. If you click on this plan, your page will look something like this. On this page, you will find a link here to see the actual write-up of the Animal Care Plan. You will also find the guidelines for animal care and the HMSC open flow through seawater system use requirements. Under the resources, you will find this recording that you're watching now if you'd like to watch it again. You will find some documentation on how to take care of the animals in an aquatic system. You'll also find the example best practice document that we walk through for the SOPs today. So if you'd like to use that as your baseline, you're welcome to use that as your template. There's also an example of lab tags and health logs here, and resources that we've talked about euthanasia are also found on this page. Please know that this is a living plan. So help us by making it stronger. Give us your feedback and ask any questions. I'm the chair of the committee, so please let me know if you have questions, concerns, or thoughts. My contact is here on the screen. If you're uncomfortable talking to me, please feel free to reach out to any of our community members. We're happy to talk to you and help if we can. Thank you all for taking the time to review this training, and feel free again to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks now.